The golden sun hung low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty train platform as Emma Whitley clutched her handkerchief tightly, fighting back tears of exhaustion and desperation. The Willow Creek station stood empty save for her solitary figure and the large trunk containing all her worldly possessions. The last train had departed hours ago, leaving her stranded in a town where she knew not a single soul, with nowhere to go as night approached in the Montana Territory of 1878. Emma had traveled all the way from Boston after her parents' passing, answering an advertisement for a schoolteacher position, only to discover upon arrival that the school had burned down 3 days prior. The town council representative had apologetically informed her there would be no position available for at least 6 months, leaving her with dwindling funds and fading hope. "Excuse me, miss, been waiting here since noon by the looks of it." The deep voice startled Emma. She turned to find a tall man observing her with concern in his eyes. Dust covered his worn denim pants and checkered shirt, and a cowboy hat sat atop his head. His face, though weathered by sun and wind, appeared kind, with striking blue eyes that seemed to shine even in the fading light. "Yes, I seem to have found myself in quite the predicament," Emma admitted, straightening her posture despite her weariness. "Name's Thomas Irwin. Most folks call me Tom," he said, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "Ranch is about 5 miles outside town." "Couldn't help but notice you've been standing beside that trunk all evening." "Emma Whitley," she replied with as much dignity as she could muster. "I arrived for the teaching position, only to discover it no longer exists." Tom nodded thoughtfully, replacing his hat. "Heard about the schoolhouse." "Shame, what happened?" He glanced at her trunk, then at the darkening sky. "Night's coming fast, and Willow Creek ain't got much by way of proper lodgings for a lady." Emma's shoulders slumped slightly. The small hotel in town had been full. A cattle buyers' convention had taken every room. "Come rest your feet in my wagon," Tom said suddenly, gesturing to a sturdy buckboard wagon hitched to 2 chestnut horses. "Got a spare room at my sister's place. She's a widow, runs the ranch with me. She'd be mighty pleased to have female company." Emma hesitated, years of proper Boston upbringing warning against accepting rides from strange men. Yet something in his steady gaze reassured her. What choice did she have? "Spend the night on the platform? That's very kind, Mr. Irwin, but I wouldn't wish to impose." "No imposition, Miss Whitley. Sarah, that's my sister, she's always saying the ranch is too quiet. Besides," he added with a gentle smile, "can't rightly leave a lady stranded as night falls. Wouldn't be proper." After a moment's deliberation, Emma nodded. "Thank you, I would be most grateful." Tom lifted her heavy trunk with surprising ease, securing it in the wagon bed. He offered his hand to help her onto the wooden seat, and Emma felt a curious warmth spread through her fingers as they touched. She attributed it to relief, nothing more. As the wagon rolled away from the station, Emma gazed at the small town of Willow Creek disappearing behind them. The vast Montana landscape opened before her, rolling hills bathed in sunset hues, distant mountains standing sentinel against the darkening sky. Despite her precarious situation, she felt an unexpected sense of possibility blooming within her. "Beautiful country," she murmured, almost to herself. "That it is," Tom agreed, his profile strong against the sunset. "Different from Boston, I imagine." "Very different," Emma said, surprised. "How did you know I'm from Boston?" Tom's lips curved into a smile. "Your accent. Plus those fine leather boots, ain't seen much dust before today." Emma glanced down at her once immaculate boots, now coated with the earth of Montana Territory. A small laugh escaped her. "I suppose I do stand out rather conspicuously." "Nothing wrong with that," Tom replied. "Folks out here come from all over. Each brings something new." As the wagon traveled along the rutted road, Emma learned that Tom had come to Montana after the Civil War, building his ranch from nothing over 12 years. His sister Sarah had joined him after losing her husband at Vicksburg. The Irwin Ranch raised cattle and horses, with a reputation for the finest quarter horses in the territory. "And what brought you west, Miss Whitley?" Tom asked. "Teaching posts ain't scarce back east." Emma's hands twisted in her lap. "My parents passed last winter, influenza." The house went to pay debts, and she paused, swallowing the lump in her throat. I needed to start anew, somewhere far away. Tom nodded, not pressing further. Montana's good for new beginnings. The road curved around a hillside, revealing a valley below. A cluster of buildings formed the Irwin Ranch, a sturdy two-story house, barn, corral, and several outbuildings. Lamplight glowed in the windows, and smoke curled from the chimney into the evening sky. "Welcome to Willow Creek Ranch," Tom said, a note of pride in his voice. As they approached, a woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on an apron. Sarah Irwin was several years older than Tom, with the same blue eyes but graying hair pulled into a practical bun. Her face showed initial confusion, then curiosity. "Tom." "Wasn't expecting company," she called as the wagon halted. Tom jumped down and helped Emma descend. "Sarah, this is Miss Emma Whitley from Boston. She came for the teaching position." Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. "The schoolhouse fire. Oh, you poor dear, come in, come in. You must be exhausted." Within moments, Emma found herself in a warm kitchen, a cup of hot coffee in her hands and a plate of freshly baked biscuits before her. The sudden kindness of these strangers brought tears to her eyes, which she hastily blinked away. "You'll stay here tonight, of course," Sarah declared, brooking no argument. "We can figure things out in the morning." That night, in a simple but comfortable bedroom, Emma gazed out the window at the vast star-filled sky so different from Boston's. She thought of Tom's steady hands guiding the horses, his quiet strength, the kindness in his eyes. "Just gratitude," she whispered to herself. "Nothing more." Outside, Tom stood on the porch, looking toward the room where their unexpected guest slept. Something about Emma Whitley's courage in the face of adversity had stirred his heart in a way he hadn't felt in years. But she was educated, refined, a city woman who would surely return east once circumstances allowed. "Just being neighborly," he murmured to the night sky. "Nothing more." Neither could have predicted how wrong they both were. The next morning, Emma woke to sunlight streaming through curtains and the distant sounds of ranch life, horses nickering, cattle lowing, men calling to one another. For a moment, disorientation seized her, then memory returned. She was at Willow Creek Ranch, miles from anywhere, with no job and dwindling funds. She dressed quickly in her second-best dress, pinned her chestnut hair neatly, and made her way downstairs. She found Sarah kneading dough in the kitchen, her sleeves rolled up and flour dusting her forearms. "Good morning, Miss Whitley," Sarah greeted warmly. "Sleep well." "Yes, thank you, and please call me Emma," Sarah smiled. "Emma, then. Breakfast is on the table. Tom's already been out since dawn." Emma ate heartily, surprising herself with her appetite. The eggs, bacon, and biscuits tasted different here, fresher somehow. Through the window, she watched men moving about the corral, breaking horses. She spotted Tom's tall figure directing operations, his gestures confident and assured. "What will you do now?" Sarah asked, joining her with a cup of coffee. Emma sighed. "I have enough money for perhaps a month at the hotel. Once rooms become available, I'll need to find work of some kind until the school is rebuilt." Sarah studied her thoughtfully. "What did you teach in Boston?" "Everything, really. Reading, writing, arithmetic, history, some natural sciences, and music." "Music?" Sarah's eyes lit up. "What instruments?" "Piano, primarily, some violin." Sarah set her cup down with a decisive click. "Stay here. I beg your pardon. Stay here at the ranch. I've been wanting to learn the piano for years. Tom bought one for my birthday, but it sits in the parlor gathering dust, and my niece and nephew could use proper schooling." "Your niece and nephew," Tom's children. Didn't he mention them? Daniel's 12 and Elizabeth's 10. Their mother, Tom's wife, died in childbirth with Elizabeth. They get some schooling in town when weather permits, but it's irregular at best. Emma blinked, absorbing this new information. Tom was a widower with 2 children. He hadn't mentioned a family. "They're at the Mitchell's place," Sarah explained, correctly reading Emma's expression. "Nancy Mitchell takes the children from several ranches every few weeks for concentrated lessons. They're due back tomorrow." "I couldn't possibly impose." "Nonsense," Sarah interrupted. "You need a place to stay. We need a teacher. You can have the room you slept in, meals provided, and a small wage besides, at least until the school reopens." Before Emma could respond, the kitchen door opened and Tom entered, removing his hat. His eyes found Emma immediately, and a smile transformed his features. "Miss Whitley, you're up. Hope Sarah's been taking good care of you." "Indeed she has. In fact, she's made me a most unexpected offer." Tom raised an eyebrow at his sister, who quickly outlined her proposal. As she spoke, Emma studied Tom's face, noting the way the skin crinkled around his eyes when he listened intently, the strong line of his jaw, the slight gray at his temples contrasting with otherwise dark hair. "It's a fine idea," Tom said when Sarah finished, "but the decision is Miss Whitley's." Both siblings looked at her expectantly. Emma considered her options carefully. Returning east was impossible without funds. Staying in town would deplete her savings quickly. The ranch offered security, purpose, and time to plan her next steps. "I accept," Emma said finally. "Though I insist you call me Emma, both of you." Sarah clapped her hands in delight. Tom's smile widened, and Emma felt an inexplicable flutter in her chest at the approval in his eyes. "Welcome to Willow Creek Ranch, Emma," he said, her name sounding different somehow in his deep voice. "Glad to have you with us." The day passed in a whirl of activity as Emma settled into ranch life. Sarah showed her the piano in the parlor, a beautiful instrument that had traveled by wagon all the way from St. Louis. Emma's fingers itched to play, but she restrained herself, promising lessons would begin soon. Tom gave her a tour of the ranch buildings, explaining operations with evident pride. Emma listened attentively, impressed by the scope of his accomplishments. Willow Creek Ranch employed 8 men full-time, ran over 500 head of cattle, and bred horses sought after throughout the territory. "It's remarkable what you've built here," Emma said as they walked back toward the house in the late afternoon. Tom shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Just did what needed doing, one day at a time. Nevertheless, it represents tremendous vision and perseverance." He glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Reckon we both know something about perseverance. Can't be easy leaving everything familiar behind." Emma looked away, unexpectedly moved by his understanding. "No, but sometimes necessary." "Sometimes necessary," he echoed softly. That evening after dinner, Sarah insisted Emma play something on the piano. Despite her protests about being out of practice, Emma eventually seated herself at the instrument, running her fingers lightly over the keys. The piano needed tuning but was otherwise in good condition. She began with a simple chop-in nocturne, her fingers remembering the patterns despite months of neglect. The music filled the parlor, transforming the frontier ranch house into something else entirely. When she finished, silence hung in the air for several heartbeats. "That was beautiful," Sarah said finally, her voice thick with emotion. Emma turned to find Tom watching her with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. He said nothing, but his eyes conveyed what words could not: wonder, appreciation, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. Later, alone in her room, Emma stood at the window gazing at the stars. In just one day, her circumstances had changed completely. She had a roof over her head, meaningful work, and, what, a strange attraction to a man she barely knew. A widower with responsibilities, a life established here in this wild country so different from her own background. "Don't be ridiculous," she scolded herself. He offered help because it was the right thing to do, nothing more. Yet when she finally slept, her dreams were filled with blue eyes and gentle hands. The next day brought new challenges as Tom's children returned home. Daniel was a serious boy with his father's features and a watchful demeanor. Elizabeth, or Beth as everyone called her, was a whirlwind of energy with dark braids and curious eyes. Both regarded Emma with undisguised suspicion. "Are you going to be our new mother?" Beth asked bluntly during lunch, causing Emma to choke on her water. "Elizabeth." Tom reprimanded, his face flushing beneath his tan. "Miss Whitley is our teacher," Sarah explained gently. "Until the school in town is rebuilt." Daniel studied Emma intently. "Do you know geometry? Mr. Patterson in town couldn't explain it properly." "I do," Emma replied, recovering her composure. "And various other subjects will determine where you both stand academically and proceed accordingly." "Pa says you play the piano like an angel," Beth said, ignoring her father's embarrassed cough. "Will you teach me?" Emma glanced at Tom, whose eyes were fixed determinedly on his plate. "If your father approves, yes. I'd like that." Beth decided. None of the other girls at school have a piano teacher. By the end of the meal, Emma had established that lessons would begin the following morning in the ranch office, which Tom offered to convert temporarily into a classroom. The children seemed to accept her presence, if not yet embrace it, which Emma considered progress enough. As weeks passed, Emma fell into the rhythm of ranch life. Mornings were devoted to teaching Daniel and Beth, afternoons to helping Sarah with household management and piano lessons for both Sarah and Beth. Daniel showed no interest in music, but possessed a keen mind for mathematics and natural sciences. Tom was often busy with ranch operations, but he made time each evening to review the children's progress with Emma. These conversations, initially formal, gradually evolved into broader discussions about books, politics, and their respective backgrounds. Emma discovered that beneath Tom's frontier exterior lay a thoughtful, intelligent mind hungry for knowledge. Never had much formal schooling, he admitted one evening as they sat on the porch after the children were in bed. Left home at 16 to fight in the war, then came west afterward. Read when I can, but there's always more to learn. You're being modest, Emma countered. Your understanding of practical matters, engineering the irrigation system, breeding livestock selectively, it's applied science of the highest order. Tom laughed softly. Never thought of it that way, just solutions to problems. The best kind of intelligence, Emma said sincerely. Their eyes met in the lamplight and something passed between them, a recognition, an understanding. Emma felt her pulse quicken and looked away first, suddenly conscious of how close they were sitting. Tom cleared his throat. Getting late, you should rest. Yes, Emma agreed hastily. Good night, Tom. Good night, Emma. As summer bloomed across the Montana landscape, Emma found herself increasingly drawn to this life she'd stumbled into by chance. The vast open spaces that had initially intimidated her now represented freedom. The physical demands of ranch living had strengthened her body. Her hands were no longer soft, her complexion sun-kissed despite her bonnet. More concerning were her growing feelings for Tom. She found herself watching him when he was unaware the way he gently instructed Daniel in roping techniques, his patient explanations to Beth about why the sky changes color at sunset, his quiet competence in all things. At night, she imagined what it might be like to be held in his strong arms, to feel his lips against hers. Foolish thoughts, she whispered to herself. He sees you as nothing more than his children's teacher. But sometimes, she caught him looking at her with an expression that suggested otherwise when she laughed with the children, when she played the piano in the evenings, when she successfully mounted and rode the gentle mare he had selected especially for her. In those moments, hope flared in her heart before common sense extinguished it. July brought scorching heat and the annual Founders' Day celebration in Willow Creek. The entire Irwin household planned to attend, and excitement ran high, particularly among the children. There'll be a dance, Beth informed Emma importantly. Pa never dances, but maybe he will with you. Beth, Tom warned from across the breakfast table, Miss Whitley will dance with whomever she chooses. But that's enough, he said firmly. Emma kept her eyes on her plate, conscious of Sarah's knowing gaze. The older woman had become a confidante over the past months, though Emma had never explicitly confirmed her feelings for Tom. The day of the celebration dawned bright and clear. Emma dressed with special care in her best blue dress, which Sarah had helped alter to the current fashion. She pinned her hair up elegantly, allowing a few curls to frame her face, and permitted herself a touch of rose water. When she descended the stairs, Tom was waiting in the hallway, dressed in his Sunday best, a dark suit that transformed him from rancher to gentleman. He stared at her, momentarily speechless. You look. He began, then faltered. That is, blue suits you. Thank you, Emma replied, equally flustered. You look very handsome yourself. Sarah appeared with the children, preventing further awkwardness. Soon they were all in the wagon heading to town, Beth chattering excitedly about the promised ice cream and games. Willow Creek had transformed for the occasion. Bunting decorated the main street, tables groaned with food, and a platform had been erected for dancing. Emma recognized many faces now: the storekeeper, the blacksmith, families from neighboring ranches, all of whom greeted her warmly. Her position at Willow Creek Ranch had granted her acceptance in the community. The day passed in a whirl of activities. Emma helped judge the children's spelling competition, applauded Daniel's victory in the horseshoe toss, and watched Beth's delight in the three-legged race. Throughout it all, she was conscious of Tom's presence nearby, his occasional glances in her direction. As evening approached, lanterns were lit, and the musicians took their places. Couples moved onto the dance floor as the first waltz began. Emma stood with Sarah, watching the dancers. "Might I have this dance, Miss Whitley?" The voice belonged not to Tom but to Samuel Parker, the young doctor who had recently established a practice in town. Handsome and well-spoken, he had made his interest in Emma clear during her visits to town. "Thank you, doctor." "Parker," Emma accepted politely, allowing him to lead her onto the floor. As they danced, Emma caught sight of Tom watching from the edge of the platform, his expression unreadable. "Doctor." Parker proved an accomplished dancer and pleasant conversationalist, but Emma found herself distracted, her attention repeatedly drawn to the tall figure standing apart from the crowd. When the dance ended, Dr. Parker escorted her back to Sarah, only to be immediately replaced by the bank manager requesting the next dance. Emma accepted with a smile, though her eyes sought Tom, who had disappeared. After 3 consecutive dances with different partners, Emma excused herself, needing fresh air. She walked away from the crowd, toward a quiet spot near the creek that gave the town its name. To her surprise, she found Tom already there, skipping stones across the water in the moonlight. "Quite the popular dance partner," he commented without looking at her. "It's kind of them to include me," Emma replied carefully, sensing tension in his posture. Dr. Parker seemed especially attentive. Emma studied Tom's profile. He was very polite. Tom skipped another stone, 6 perfect bounces across the moonlit water. "He's a good man, educated. Could provide well for a wife." "I'm sure he could," Emma said, a hint of irritation creeping into her voice. "Is there a particular reason you're singing his praises to me?" Tom finally turned to face her. "You deserve a good match, Emma. Someone who can give you the kind of life you're accustomed to." "And you presume to know what kind of life that is?" Emma challenged, her frustration building. "What I'm accustomed to or what I might want?" "A woman like you, cultured, educated, belongs in town, not out at her rough cattle ranch teaching 2 half-wild children." Emma's temper flared. "A woman like me. You've decided what I am and where I belong without once asking what I might choose for myself." Tom stepped closer, his eyes intense in the moonlight. "And what would you choose, Emma? If you could have anything," the question hung in the air between them. Emma's heart pounded as she considered her answer. Boldness seized her. Perhaps it was the magic of the night, or perhaps months of suppressed feelings demanding expression. "I would choose a life that matters," she said quietly. "Work that fulfills me, people who value me for my mind and heart, not just my accomplishments or appearance." She paused, gathering courage. "I would choose a man who sees me as I truly am and loves me for it, a man of integrity and strength whose hands build rather than destroy." "A man like Emma," Tom interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. He stepped closer still, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "I've no right to ask, but I need to know, is there any chance you could be happy here, not just for now, but permanently?" Emma's breath caught. "Are you asking what I think you're asking, Thomas Irwin?" "Doing a poor job of it," he admitted with a rueful smile. "I've loved you since that first night when you played Chopin in my parlor, maybe even before that when you stood so brave and alone at the station. But I never thought." Emma didn't let him finish. Rising on her toes, she pressed her lips to his in a kiss that answered his question more eloquently than words could have. Tom froze momentarily in surprise, then his arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him as he deepened the kiss. When they finally parted, breathless, Tom rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that for months," he confessed. "What took you so long?" Emma teased, her eyes shining with happiness. "Fear," he said honestly. "Fear you'd reject me or worse, accept out of gratitude or necessity. I wanted you to have choices." "I've made my choice," Emma said firmly. "I choose you, Thomas Irwin, your children, this life." Their second kiss was interrupted by an excited squeal. They turned to find Beth watching them, eyes wide with delight. "I knew it," she exclaimed. "I'm going to tell Daniel and Aunt Sarah." Before either could respond, she dashed away, her ribbon-bedecked braids bouncing behind her. Tom laughed, the sound free and joyous. "Well, I suppose that settles the matter of announcing our intentions." "I suppose it does," Emma agreed, smiling. "Though you haven't actually stated those intentions clearly, Mr. Irwin." Tom immediately dropped to one knee, taking her hand in his. All humor left his face, replaced by solemn sincerity. "Emma Whitley, you came into my life unexpected and changed everything for the better. You've brought music and learning and joy back into our home. Would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife, mother to my children, and partner in all things?" Tears of happiness filled Emma's eyes. "Yes, Thomas, with all my heart, yes." He rose and kissed her again, sealing their promise under the vast Montana sky. The news spread quickly through the celebration. Sarah hugged Emma with tears in her eyes, whispering, "I've prayed for this." Daniel, more reserved than his sister, simply nodded and said, "That's good," though his eyes revealed his approval. Dr. Parker offered sincere congratulations, assuring Emma he harbored no hard feelings. The couple agreed to marry in September after the cattle drive and before winter set in. The rebuilt schoolhouse would be completed by then, but Emma had already decided to continue teaching Daniel and Beth at home while taking on the position of music teacher at the new school 3 days a week. The wedding day dawned crisp and clear, with autumn painting the landscape in gold and crimson. The ceremony took place at Willow Creek Ranch, with neighbors and townspeople gathering to witness the union. Emma wore a dress of ivory silk that Sarah had helped her sew, with wildflowers in her hair instead of a veil. As she walked toward Tom, who waited beside the minister under an arch of autumn branches, Emma thought of that fateful evening at the train station. How close she had come to turning down his offer, how different her life might have been. The journey from that moment to this had been unexpected in every way, yet perfectly right. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, his voice carrying across the assembled guests. Tom took her hand, his blue eyes filled with love and promise. "Ready for our new beginning," he whispered. "I've been ready since the moment you said, 'Come rest your feet in my wagon,'" Emma replied softly. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, pledging love and fidelity through all life's joys and sorrows. When Tom slipped the gold band onto her finger, a band he had ridden 3 days to Helena to select, Emma felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Tom gathered Emma in his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that spoke of forever. The assembled guests erupted in cheers and applause, none louder than Beth, who had appointed herself flower girl for the occasion. The celebration continued well into the evening, with feasting, dancing, and music. Emma played the piano while Tom surprised everyone by singing in a rich baritone. Later, they danced under the stars, unmindful of watching eyes lost in each other. "Happy Mrs. Irwin," Tom murmured against her ear as they swayed to the music. "Completely Mr. Irwin," Emma answered, resting her head against his chest, "though I still have much to learn about ranch life." "We've got a lifetime for that learning," Tom promised. "Together." As night fell, the newlyweds bid farewell to their guests and retreated to the main house, which had been transformed in preparation for their marriage. Tom had expanded the master bedroom, adding windows that overlooked the mountains and building a bookcase to house Emma's beloved volumes. Most touching was the writing desk, positioned to capture the morning light, a place for Emma to pursue her own interests. "It's perfect," Emma whispered, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. Tom drew her into his arms. "You're perfect," he corrected, his voice husky with emotion and desire. "I still can't believe you chose this life, chose me." Emma reached up to trace the beloved contours of his face. "Best choice I ever made, Thomas Irwin. I waited for you without even knowing it, waited for this love, this life, this sense of belonging." Their kiss deepened, passion rising between them as they came together at last as husband and wife. In the sanctuary of their room, they discovered each other completely, their union as natural and right as the land and sky outside their window. Later, wrapped in each other's arms, they talked of the future expanding the ranch, perhaps adding to their family, the changes coming to Montana territory as more settlers arrived. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. "I love you, Emma Irwin," Tom whispered as she drifted toward sleep. "I love you too," she replied, secure in his embrace. "Always." 2 years later, Emma stood on the porch of Willow Creek Ranch, watching as Tom approached on horseback, Daniel riding proudly beside him. They had been checking the northern pastures, a responsibility that Daniel, now 14, took very seriously. At Emma's feet, 10-month-old James Thomas Irwin practiced his newfound walking skills, gripping her skirt for balance. Beth sat nearby, reading aloud from Little Women, her voice clear and expressive, a skill honed through Emma's patient teaching. Sarah emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. "They're back earlier than expected," she observed, smiling at the sight of her great-nephew taking wobbling steps. "Jamie's getting more confident by the day." "Just like his father," Emma agreed fondly, watching as Tom dismounted in one fluid motion, then helped Daniel down. The ranch had prospered over the past 2 years. The addition of breeding pairs from back east had improved their stock, and Tom's innovative irrigation system had expanded their grazing land. Emma's music lessons had become so popular that she'd had to limit students to 2 days a week to balance her family responsibilities and her continuing education of Daniel and Beth. Life wasn't without challenges. Last winter had been brutal, with blizzards that threatened their herds. A dispute over water rights with a neighboring rancher had briefly turned ugly before Tom's diplomacy prevailed. Emma had suffered a difficult pregnancy with Jamie, confined to bed for the final months, yet through it all, their love had only deepened. Each challenge faced together had strengthened their bond, each joy shared had multiplied their happiness. Tom strode toward the house, his face lighting up at the sight of his family. He scooped Jamie into his arms, spinning the laughing child before kissing Emma tenderly. "How are my favorite people today?" he asked, his arms settling around Emma's waist. "Better now that you're home," Emma replied truthfully. Daniel regaled them with tales of the northern pasture while Beth insisted on reading a particularly moving passage from her book. Jamie babbled happily, secure in his father's arms. Sarah announced that dinner would be ready soon, prompting everyone to wash up. As the family moved inside, Tom held Emma back for a moment on the porch. In the golden light of sunset, he looked at her with the same wonder he had shown on their wedding day. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "About the life you might have had?" Emma shook her head, her heart full. "Not one. Everything I need is right here." Tom's kiss was gentle but held the promise of passion to come later when the house was quiet. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking about that evening at the train station, if I'd been even 10 minutes later." "You weren't," Emma said simply. "You were exactly where you needed to be when I needed you most." "Providence?" Tom suggested, his eyes tender. "Providence?" Emma agreed, standing on tiptoe to kiss him once more. Inside, Beth called that dinner was ready. Hand in hand, they walked into their home, surrounded by the family they had built together. Secure in a love that had begun with a simple offer of kindness on a distant evening so long ago. She had waited beside her trunk all evening, and the cowboy had said, "Come rest your feet in my wagon." Neither could have imagined then where that journey would lead to a love that would last a lifetime, a family bound by more than blood, and a home built on the foundation of their shared dreams. In the years to come, Emma would often reflect on that moment of decision when desperation and hope had balanced on a knife's edge. How fortunate she had been to find the courage to say yes, to trust her instincts, to take that first step toward the man who would become her world. And Tom would marvel at the twist of fate that had brought him to the station at that precise moment, allowing him to find the woman who completed his life in ways he had never imagined possible. Together they had created something beautiful on the wild frontier, a legacy of love that would endure through generations, beginning with that fateful evening when she waited and he offered, and both their lives changed forever.